All right. And as you were doing in the previous WebEx, you can always use the yes/no button, okay, to answer questions, or you can make use of the question and answer panel, or even the chat to post any comment or questions you have while we are going through the different material. Okay. I'm gonna also share my desktop. All right. So now I started already sharing my desktop. Okay. All right. Are you able to see my screen? First of all, can you hear me? Because I didn't ask. Can anybody hear me? Okay, thank you, Amalia. All right, so we think we are ready to go to start. And okay, so as we were saying, okay, this session it's about a review. It's a summary of what are the different changes, because as you know, tomorrow is the go live date for the travel solution, right? For what we call the travel solution, okay? And we are moving from FSS to Umoja, right? So we did the same thing we did with Cluster 4 for international staff. We are moving some other staff categories and non-staff categories from FSS to Umoja. Okay, so with this session, what we want to discuss is which are the changes, and also to talk about what could be the impacts for you as a finance LP. Okay. So we are moving, as we said, we are moving from FSS to Umoja, and very similar with what happened with international staff, PT8, right? It's being fully decommissioned, right? So up to today, it was only used by national staff, and now it's going to be fully decommissioned, and it's going to be replaced by the travel request document in Umoja. Okay, so in the left side we have FSS, okay, and in the right we have Umoja. So PT8, it's fully decommissioned as of tomorrow. So the 15th June is the go live date, all right, for the travel module for all different staff and non-staff categories. And PT8, it's fully replaced by the travel request document in Umoja, all right? And what about the F10, all right? So F10s, it's fully decommissioned by the travel module. Yes or no? What would you say if I would ask you if the F10 is fully decommissioned or is fully replaced by the travel module in Umoja? So please click on yes or no, depending on your thoughts. So do you think the F10 is going to be, the F10 claim is going to be fully decommissioned by the expense report in Umoja? Yes, we have yes. All right, we have some no's. Okay, so it's going to be mainly replaced by the expense report, but not fully. And why do we say that? So the expense report in the travel module will replace all the claims, but only the ones that are related to travel, right? So if, as you know, the F10 it's also used for other non-travel related expenses. That's why F10 it's not fully decommissioned, and it will remain for staff members to claim non-travel related expenses. All right. So while the PT8 document in FSS it's fully decommissioned by the travel request document in Umoja, F10 will still remain to be able to claim non-travel related expenses. Okay. Same thing as happens as of today for international staff. And then the passenger booking system in FSS will still remain as the system or the document to be used to book, right, for seats, right, to book for seats in UN flight. When the mode of travel is a UN flight, right, the PBS passenger booking system in FSS will still be the system to be used to manage the different seats in the UN flight. All right, so this functionality, the PBS, is not being replaced by Umoja. Okay, so let's continue and let's talk a little bit about what also touches the finance and the FM module, and let's talk a little bit about how the travel module is integrated with the finance and with the FN modules. So, as you may know, right, the GL account and FN commitment item derivation is based on 3 different criteria. Okay, is based on the travel type selected, right? So, depending on the type of travel raised, the GL account or the FN commitment item that will commit the funds, right, will be different depending if it's an official business travel type, if it's within mission, training, rest and recuperation, or if it's an HR related travel. Okay, so the selection of the correct travel type, that it's you know that the mainly the traveler is the one raising the travel request. So depending on the travel type selected, the GL account that will be debited, right, or that will be covered, that will be touched in the transaction, will be different. Right. The other criteria that has an impact in the GL or in the commitment item, it's the employee subgroup, right? The employee subgroup that, as you know, it's a field in the HR master record of the traveler, right? So as of tomorrow, all travelers that are included in a travel request in the Umoja module will need an HR mini master, and one of the fields that is specified in the HR mini master is the employee subgroup that categorizes the type of traveler, right? It can be, so right now only international staff, right, are the ones that can travel using Umoja, but as of tomorrow, other type of travelers will use Umoja, okay, to travel, including national staff like general service, including military, right, like UN police, military observers, including non-staff like consultants or individual contractors, and also UN volunteers. Okay, so the travel module will be open for to many other employees or groups, and depending on the person that is traveling, that will derive or that will trigger a different GL, right, and a different FM commitment item. Okay, so the class, for example, the class that will be that will cover the expenses could be different depending on the traveler, if it's national staff or if it's military, the one traveling. Okay, so these are 2 of the criteria that are deriving the GL and FM derivation logic, and the last one is the position type, right? This is the last criteria that has an impact in the GL account and FM derivation logic, and the type of position is also specified in the HR, right, in the HR module, and it specifies the type of post, right, the type of position that staff has been given, if it's established post, temporary post, or if it's non-staff, right? So not only the GL account and commitment item not only has to do with the employee user group, but also with the position type. Let's say, for example, a national staff could have or could belong to established post or to a temporary post, right? So depending on the type of position, the GL and the commitment item could be different. All right. So remember that you can always use the chat or the Q&A, okay, in case you want to do any comment or question. All right. So let me open also the chat panel. Okay. So I have all your comments here. So far nothing in the chat. And as you were using with David during the past sessions, yeah. So we have here some questions in the Q&A. All right. All right. So we have some questions about the contingent members, right? If they are paid through Paymaster, right? So contingents we will cover later because they are military and they will also travel with using Umoja, right? And they are mainly paid using Paymaster. So you are right. Contingents will still be paid using the Paymaster. All right. And so yes, contingent members, they are going to be paid using Paymaster, or if they have a bank account, because we will discuss later that all travelers, starting from tomorrow, all travelers, no matter the type, if they are contingents or if they are military officers, all of them will have an HR record in Umoja. So they could have, for example, their own bank account if needed. Okay. All right. So, and then we have some questions about the FSS to Umoja migration. Okay. So it's changing from FSS to Umoja, right? So no paper-based. They are going to be using Umoja as a new system to raise the travel request and the expense reports. Okay. And as we said, PT8 will be fully decommissioned by Umoja, but F10 will remain to claim non-travel related expenses. That's why F10 will still be available in FSS, but only to claim non-travel related expenses. Okay. All right. Yeah. So these employee groups and employee subgroups are appearing in the HR mini master, right? And we can, because we also have a question on the different types of employee groups and employee subgroups. Okay. So we are taking note of your questions, and for example, the ones you are asking about the different list of employee subgroups, that one we can also share with you after the WebEx session. Okay, so we will send to you the list of employee groups and employee subgroups, so that you have a clear understanding of the different employee groups and employee subgroups. All right. Okay. So as we were saying, these different items are the ones that have an impact in the integration between the travel module and FI and FM, right? And they have to be really reviewed by both the traveler and the TSA, especially the travel type, that is the one selected by the traveler. So the traveler will select the travel type, and this will have an impact in the GL that will be touched by the transaction. For example, official travel could be within mission or training, right? So if the traveler doesn't select within mission, if it's going to be a within mission travel, the GL that will be affected could be the wrong one. So the travel type, it's one of the fields that should be carefully reviewed by the traveler and the TSA. Okay. So in FM, we will have an impact in the commitment item that is being touched, right? And it's also, remember that we have the funds availability check automatically done by the system. Okay. And in FI, we have a link between the travel type, employee issue group, and position type with the GL account that will have the postings. Okay. All right. So we have questions about the migration. Okay. So as we said, the date for the go live it's tomorrow. So as from tomorrow, FSS will no longer be available to raise travel requests, and it's going to be Umoja, the system that will be used to raise any kind of travel request and expense reports, okay, for any kind of staff and non-staff. Okay. All right. So we will see later what is required, and because we have some questions about the mini master, and so we will see later what's required in order to raise a travel request for any kind of staff and non-staff. So let's first focus on national staff. So how national staff are going to travel? Okay. So for national staff, the HR process that is going to be, as we said, any kind of traveler. As from tomorrow, every kind of traveler will need to have an index number and an HR master record. So for national staff, there's no problem, because all national staff, as part of their recruitment process, they all have an index number and HR master record created when they are onboarded, right? So when they are recruited, the HR partner will raise a personnel action and will create the HR master record. So the HR process is being taken care by HR. So all national staff will have their own index number and their HR master record. And for any kind of travel, it's going to be always the national staff responsible for raising their own travel request. So no matter if it's if the travel request is within or outside mission area, it's going to be always the national staff raising their own travel request, and the process and screens are very similar compared to the ones that international staff are using. So as you know, the travel request is firstly reviewed by the travel and shipment approver, certifying officer, and finally it goes to the travel processing officer, right? The TB10 and the TB20 roles, right? That is the one that deals with the vendors, right? In order to get the quotations and to assign the travel request to travel vendors to get the tickets. Okay. So later on we will discuss, because a new role is being introduced, that is the TB20, that is the TPO non-commercial, right? So for travel request that doesn't have any commercial ticket involved, right? There is a new role that is the TPO non-commercial role, that they don't have to deal with travel vendors, and they only approve travel requests that don't have any commercial ticket. Okay, so that's why we have here two different roles: TB10, that is the regular TPO, the commercial TPO, and the TB20, that is the non-commercial TPO. All right. Okay, so after the travel request it's fully approved, right? We have the ticket billing process, right? So if the travel request involves any commercial ticket, the travel vendor will send the invoice, and in the mission we will run, right? The TB12 will be in charge of running the ticket billing process, right, to pay the vendor. Okay, and this ticket billing process will only apply to the travel request that includes any commercial ticket, right? So if the travel request is approved by the by the non-commercial TPO, there's gonna be no ticket billing process involved. All right. We will see later on that for the ticket billing process, And for national staff, there are no changes compared to the international staff. Okay, we have some questions about the difference between TB10 and TB20. Don't worry, we will have specific slides for that. But TB10 refers to commercial TPO, TB20 to non-commercial TPO. So if there is no commercial ticket in the travel request, the travel request will go to non-commercial TPOs for approval. All right. So after the travel request is fully approved and after the staff member comes back from the trip, the expense report process will initiate and national staff will create their own expense report in Umoja. So this expense report, it's what is currently done using F10, right, in FSS. If there are changes that have an impact in the amount to be paid or to be recovered in the expense report, the expense report will have to be reapproved, right, by the TSA and later on by the travel claims processor, right? So if there are no changes in the expense report will be automatically approved. But if there are changes that impact the amount to be paid to the traveler, then the expense report will have to be reapproved. Okay. All right. We have also some comment about the education grant. So remember that here we are talking about the changes because of the implementation of the travel module for national staff and non-staff, like UMBs, CACs. So for education grant, so this is more HR related, not that much related to travel. Okay, and so here we are covering mainly the impacts because of the go live of the travel module for new staff categories. Okay. All right. So here we have, remember that for national staff, still the standalone expense report applies. So as you know, the traveler can raise a standalone expense report. So there is no need to raise a travel request if the following conditions apply. So if there are no commercial ticket, no travel advance, and the duration of the trip is 3 days or less, in that case, the traveler is given the option of submitting standalone expense report without a travel request. And this is what we call the standalone expense report. Okay. And also the standalone expense report, it's also used to claim expenses that were not included in the original travel request. Okay, so standalone expense report is used for trips that comply with these 3 criteria, right? Non-commercial ticket, no travel advance, and trip duration 3 days or less, and also to claim any other travel-related expenses that were not included in the linked expense report. Okay. And talking about leave request. So leave request is still required. So besides the travel request in Umoja, the national staff is still required to submit their leave request and to get it approved before the travel request. Medical and security clearances are still required if needed. And as we said, passenger booking system is still remaining in FSS. Okay, but I mean, it doesn't have to do with finance, but at least you know what's coming. Okay, with this travel implementation. All right, so let's move ahead. We had some questions about the new role, right? The TB20. So here you have TB20. It's about non-commercial travel offices, right? So this is a new role that is being created for this deployment, all right, to somehow facilitate, right, the approval process, because we expect that most of the trips for national staff or for UMBs or for militaries are going to be done within mission and without a commercial ticket. So normally using a UN flight or UN vehicle, right? So in order to facilitate the approval of this kind of travel request, a new role, that is the TB20, has been created, and they will take care only of approving travel requests where no commercial ticket is required. Okay. Okay. So for this TPO non-commercial, so the TPO non-commercial will apply to official travel category and uniform personnel travel category. Remember that other travel categories are, for example, HR travel category or entitlement travel. So the TPO applies to these two travel categories: official travel and all travel related to military, right, related to uniform personnel. And within the official travel category, we have, for example, official business, we have training, we have within mission travel. So the TPO non-commercial will be able to approve travel requests related to these two travel categories, and always when there is no commercial ticket. So you know that there is a field in the travel request that is the mode of travel. So if the travel request doesn't include any commercial mode of travel in the itinerary, and by commercial ticket we mean the commercial aircraft and rail, so that's mode of travel, commercial aircraft and rail. So if the travel request has any other mode of travel, like for example UN aircraft or UN vehicle, the travel request will go to this new role, to this TB20 non-commercial TPO. All right. So this is how the system is designed to understand if the travel request should go to the normal TPO, to the normal travel processing office, or to the new non-commercial travel processing office, depending on the mode of travel selected by the traveler. So the mode of travel is selected in the itinerary. So the traveler is meant to select the mode of travel, and that there are two modes of travels that are considered commercial, and that will require the vendor to send an invoice, right? To send an invoice for the tickets requested. And these two commercial mode of travel are commercial aircraft and rail, 07 rail. All right. Okay. So we have some questions about the travel advance and the standard spend report for. So what about if the travel advance is for 3 days or less? So what we were saying in the standard spend report is that the traveler is given the option of not submitting a travel request if 3 conditions apply, right? So they can just submit a standard spend report without a travel request if they are not going to request a travel advance, the travel or the trip is for 3 days or less, and there is no commercial ticket. This is what we meant with the previous slide, right? So if there is no advance, there is no commercial ticket, and the duration of the trip is for 3 days or less, the standalone spend report is an option, okay? And there is no requirement to raise a travel request. Okay, so let's move ahead. So TB20 and the TB10. So the list of TPOs that can approve a travel request is as of today. It's based on the OR unit of the traveler, right? So here, everything is driven by the OR unit that the traveler belongs to, right? So this has to do with the HR master record too, right? For example, if I am the traveler and my OR unit is located in Valencia, all right, regardless of where I'm traveling, no matter if I'm traveling, let's say, from MONUSCO to Haiti, right? The travel processing office would be always Valencia because my OR unit, right? The OR unit specified in my HR profile is the one in Valencia. So always the travel processing office is always based on the OR unit of the traveler. And this OR unit is what triggers the TPOs that can approve my travel request, and also it triggers the cost center that will pay, right, by default the travel request. So it's always based on the OR unit of the traveler, right? Let's say the mission or the section that the traveler belongs to. Okay. The TPO Approver Workcenter for the TB20 is gonna be very similar to the ones for the TB10. The only thing that is new is that new travel processing offices are being created. So right now you have mainly one travel processing office per mission, and as of tomorrow, starting from tomorrow, there are going to be basically 2 travel offices per mission, one for commercial and another one for non-commercial. Let's say, for example, for Minojust, right? We will have Minojust travel office for commercial tickets, and another one that will be non-commercial Minojust, right? So depending on the mode of travel of the travel request, the system will default the travel request either to the regular TPO office, to the regular Minojust, or to the non-commercial Minojust travel office. Okay. Yeah. So as we said before, everything is triggered by the mode of travel. So yes, so Frank, we have one colleague that is asking about what if the travel require several mode of travel, right? Let's say several mode of transportation. So if you have an itinerary that concatenates, let's say, for example, a commercial airline and UN flight, what do you think? Do you think that that travel request will require approval by the commercial TPO or by the non-commercial TPO? So let's say, for example, I'm traveling from Valencia to Goma, right? And I'm traveling Valencia, let's say, to Entebbe, and then from Entebbe I'm taking a UN flight, right? Will that require review by the normal TPO or by the non-commercial TPO? Would you say that, do you think it will go to the commercial TPO, yes or no? You can answer with a yes, no button. Yes, commercial TPO. So Carsten say yes. Okay, right, so yeah, you're right. So as long as there is one leg in the itinerary that includes a commercial mode of transportation, the travel request will go to the regular, to the commercial TPO. So if there are different legs with different mode of travel, as long as we have one leg that is with a commercial mode of transportation, the full travel request will go with the workflow to the commercial TPO. All right. So thank you for the question, Frank. All right. So let's continue, and let's continue talking about the non-commercial TPO. So the type of travel, right, can be changed, right? So let's say that the trip was non-commercial because all the legs were with the non-commercial mode of travel, later on it can be changed, right, by the TSA or by the TPO. So a new leg or the mode of travel can be changed. But this change can only be done before the travel request is approved. So in my example of traveling from Valencia to Goma, right? So let's say that now there is everything is a UN flight, right? So it could change. You can change the legs from non-commercial to commercial and vice versa, but only before the travel request is approved. Okay. Once the travel request is approved, the nature of the travel request cannot be changed anymore, meaning you cannot change the nature of a travel request from non-commercial to commercial and vice versa. And this has been done to prevent issues with the financial postings. Okay. So the nature of the travel can only be changed before the travel request is fully approved. Okay. And before the travel request is approved, the non-commercial TPO can change the nature of the travel request, right, to, let's say, to commercial, right, by adding, as we were saying, if we add a leg that has a commercial ticket, for example, commercial aircraft or rail, then the travel request, instead of going to the non-commercial TPO, will have to be approved by a regular TPO, by the TB10 role. Okay, so yeah, next meeting is asking, but about these legs and the nature of the travel. So remember, if all the legs are non-commercial, the travel request will be approved by a non-commercial TPO. That is the new role, that is the TB20. If any of the legs in the travel request has a commercial ticket, the travel request will have to be approved by the regular TPO, that is the regular role, the TB10, the one that it's currently in place as of Cluster 4 implementation. All right. So the nature of the travel request can only be changed before the travel request is approved. So Leslie is asking, but what about if the travel request was fully approved and then there is a change in the nature of the travel, right? So in that case, the travel request will have to be canceled and a new one will have to be requested. Okay. Yes. So after the travel request is fully approved, it's not possible to change any longer the nature, right? And remember, Carsten, so we have a question about the roles, okay? So we don't want to go in deep into the whole process, but so the travel request needs to be approved twice, right? So the travel request after submission has to be reviewed and certified by the TSA, that is the certifying officer, and once the TSA has certified the travel request, it goes to the travel processing office. Okay. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead. All right. So this is still screens about the TB20 role. So the screens for TB20 are very similar but slightly different because there are some costs that do not apply to non-commercial. For example, the airfare ticket cost, the transaction fee, and travel service management fees, right? That are the ones that are included in the invoices sent by vendors. This type of cost cannot be included by the TB20, by the non-commercial TPOs. Okay. They are only available when the travel request becomes commercial. Okay. So this is the airfare ticket cost. It's one of the costs that only appears if the nature of the travel request is commercial, right? And then every time that the TPO non-commercial has to approve a travel request, normally the travel request it's defaulted automatically to ticket not provided by the UN, right? And in the estimated cost, remember there were some fields that were mandatory for the TB10 role, for the commercial TPO, that are service provider, right? The travel vendor that is booking and purchasing the tickets, the itinerary using the IATA codes, the validating carrier, and the class of service, business, economy. So these fields are not mandatory for the TB20 because they are only related to commercial tickets. Okay, so they don't become mandatory any longer, and that are only for TB10. All right. So this will have an impact, right? So if the travel request doesn't include any commercial ticket, there will be no request to the travel vendor. There will be no invoice, meaning that there will be no ticket billing process involved. Okay. All right. Okay. So basically, for the national staff, we discussed a little bit about the national staff, and the process is very similar compared to what we have currently for international. The main change is that, they are gonna be starting using the Umoja for the travel request and expense reports, and the change is this new role that is being created for the non-commercial tickets. Okay, but for finance, you should know that there are going to be a new population being added with different employee groups, so there will be different GLs, right, and commitment items that will be impacted because of the implementation. Okay, because there are going to be different employee subgroups traveling with Umoja, and before they were using FSS to raise their travel request and expense reports. So let's start now talking about the uniform personnel. Right? We have also some questions about the uniform personnel contingents. We discussed a little bit about the paymaster and how they can claim, right, their expenses. Okay, I can hear some noise. All right, if you can please mute your microphone. All right, otherwise I will mute. Okay. All right, I can see that you are using the chat and the FAQ quite frequently, so if you have questions or comments, you can always refer to chat or the Q&A. Okay, so let's start discussing about the travel for militaries. Okay, so what kind of travel request will we have for militaries? So we will have deployment and repatriation travel. So this is one specific travel type to deploy or to repatriate militaries. So the different you know that they work in they are deployed for a specific period of time, let's say 6 months or 1 year. So we have specific travel type, one to deploy them and another one to repatriate them. So all this deployment and repatriation travel is always raised by the travel administrators, right? So it's always done on behalf of the militaries, right? So these travel requests are not raised by themselves. It's always done on behalf. Here we have the concept of group travel. Okay, and this we will have to talk a little bit later because it will have you need to understand how it works. Also the integration with the ticket billing process. Okay, so there will be a unique group travel request to deploy or to repatriate a group of militaries, right? And then normally, if a ticket is required, there will be an invoice from the travel vendor. Okay, so here we have is the only type of travel that we have the concept of group travel. Here we also have shipment requests. So they are entitled, when they are deployed or repatriated, they are entitled to have their personal effects shipped to the mission. Okay. They are going to be always expense report. Okay, a link to the deployment and repatriation travel. And as we said, this deployment and repatriation, it's always done on behalf by the travel administrator for uniformed personnel. The other type of travel is the within mission and non-commercial, right? So this within mission travel type, non-commercial, are the ones that are allowed for the individual uniformed personnel to be raised by themselves using the employee self-service. So IUPs, meaning military officers, the police, right? So there are, within the military employee group, there are 3, right, employee subgroups that are considered individual uniformed personnel. So for example, contingents are uniformed personnel, but they are not considered individual uniformed personnel. They are not considered IUPs. So access to the employee self-service will only be enabled for individual uniformed personnel. For other type of uniformed personnel that are not IUPs, like contingents, they will not have access to the employee self-service. All their travel requests will be done always on behalf by the travel administrator roles. So when we talk about access to the employee self-service, we always refer to IUPs, to individual uniformed personnel. All right. So individual uniformed personnel, they will have access to the employee self-service, and the only type of travel that they will be able to raise using their employee self-service will be within mission, and the only mode of travel that they will be able to select are going to be the non-commercial mode of travel. So all mode of travel except commercial flight and rail. So only within mission travel type is allowed. So that all travel requests raised by IUPs will always go to the GL or to the commitment item in FM related to within mission, right? Within mission travel type. So the system it's preventing the IUPs to select any other travel type. Okay. Commercial tickets are not allowed for IUPs using ESS, and for travel requests raised by the IUPs using employee self-service, the same IUPs will be able to submit their expense reports. Okay, and they are also able to submit standalone expense reports. Standalone expense reports in the system. Okay, so you asked before that we sent to you the different list of employee groups and employee subgroups. So when we do when we submit the list of employee groups and employee subgroups, there is one employee group that is military, and within that employee group we have 6 different subgroups, right? So we will specify the 3 of them that are considered IUPs. Okay, so yes, so military staff officers are IUPs, but contingents are not, right? Contingents that are also within the military employee group are not IUPs, are not considered IUPs. So when we send the list and the detail of the different employee groups and subgroups, we will send to you the ones that are considered IUPs. Okay, so I take note of that, and we will send it to you later on. All right. Okay. So we have questions about the military subsistence allowance and the accommodation. So keep with us. So we will talk a little bit about that later on. Okay. All right. So remember that the only difference between IUPs and normal and military that are not considered individual uniform personnel is the access to the employee self-service. So deployment and repatriation travel is done on behalf and applies to any kind of military, not only to IUPs, but to any kind of militaries. All right? And so group travel applies to any kind of military, not only to IUPs. The only difference is the access to the employee self-service. So yes, the let's say, for example, contingent can be deployed in a mission using the group travel functionality to deploy them in a mission. The only difference between IUPs and other military types, right, is their access to the employee self-service. For other official business travel types, right? For example, if the travel type if the trip is not within mission area, or if the trip involves a commercial ticket, then the IUP will not be able to raise it using employee self-service and will have to be done by the travel processing office. Sorry, by the travel administrator, okay, by the TB05. Okay, so for any other travel types within the official travel category, right, not within mission, will have to be raised on behalf. In any case, when there is a commercial ticket, it's going to be always the travel administrator raising the travel request on behalf of the traveler. And if the travel request is raised by the travel administrator, the spend report will also have to be raised by the travel administrator. Okay. All right. So yeah. So we have some. So we have a question about that. Okay. So if the IUP is traveling outside mission area, based on what you see in this slide, the IUP will not be able to raise the travel request using the employee self-service, but it will have to be the travel administrator raising the travel request on behalf of the IUP. Okay, so to keep it simple, the only ones having access to employee self-service are individual uniform personnel, right? And individual uniform personnel using employee self-service, they will only be allowed to raise within mission travel requests that do not require commercial tickets. Okay. Okay. All right. So let's move ahead. So this was the summary of the different type of travel, and let's start now talking about the first type of travel, what we call the deployment and repatriation travel, right? So what about deployment and repatriation travel? That is the concept that we said before, that is the only travel type that involves group travel. Okay, so as we said before, any kind of traveler in Umoja will require an index number, right? A GID, also called the GID, and the HR record in Umoja. So if we want to travel a group of IUPs, if we want to deploy a group of, let's say, military officers, or if we want to deploy a contingent, we will need to have, for each traveler, we will need to have their index number and their HR master record, right? So the index number has to be requested and approved. Okay, so depending on the type, this request is managed directly from HQ or raised by the mission. Okay, and the request shouldn't be taking more than 2 days, right? So there is a request and an approval to get the index number requested and approved. And once we have the index number, the HR section in the missions will create the HR minimaster in the HR module in Umoja. Okay. So remember that for any traveler in Umoja, we always need to have an index number and an HR master record. So we cannot raise in Umoja any travel request for a traveler, even if it's on behalf, without an index number and a proper HR minimaster in Umoja. So that's always a requirement for any type of travel, even if it's military or other non-staff like consultants, contractors, or UMVs. Once we have the index number and the HR minimaster, the travel administrator, because we said for deployment and repatriation, it's always the travel administrator raising the travel request on behalf, right? And here is where we have the concept of the group travel. So the travel administrator will raise a unique travel request, a unique group travel request, and will include all the different travelers. So there will be only one travel request for the entire group. So if there are 100 military officers that are being deployed into the mission, the travel administrator will raise a travel request and will include the different 100 index numbers, okay, that are traveling. The certifying officer will certify the group travel request. So no need, if there are 100 travelers, the TSA in their work center will see only one request to be approved with the details of the 100 travelers. And the same thing applies to the TPO, right? So the TPO will receive a request to travel the list of militaries, right? And will indicate the total cost, right? That the total, I mean, will liaise with the travel vendor in order to get the estimated cost to travel the group of militaries, right? And will specify the cost to travel the entire group of militaries. So we'll approve the group travel requests. Okay. So up to the approval of the travel request, everything is done as per the group travel request. So once the TPO approves the travel request, the system will automatically create the individual travel request, one for each military, and the ticket billing process, right, will be done individually, meaning that the vendor will have to send an invoice for each of the travelers. Okay, and we will discuss later on how the total cost for the entire group is split into each different travel request. So the travel request is done as a group, but then the ticket billing process and the expense report process will have to be executed individually. So the travel vendor will have to send individual invoices for each traveler. Okay, and the expense report the same, individual. So for each military, there is a need to send individual spend report for each traveler, right? So the spend report will be initiated for each traveler, and if needed, it will have to be approved for each traveler again. TSA and TCP if needed, travel claims processor will have to review and approve the individual expense reports. Okay. So let's go a little bit deeper into this, all right? And when we complete the deployment and repatriation travel, we will do a short break before we continue with the other types of travel, all right? So let's talk a little bit about what we just said, all right? So the group travel. So as we said, the travel request is created for the entire group, okay? And the travel administrator will have to select the type of IUPs, right? The type of militaries that are being included in the group travel request. If we are talking about military experts, UN police officers, military staff officers, foreign police units, or government-provided personnel. So any type of military can be included in the group travel request. Okay. However, in a group travel request, all the travelers should belong to the same employee group and subgroup, meaning that for the same group travel, we cannot mix different subgroups. So we cannot raise a travel request to travel UN police officers and foreign police unit. Right? So we have to include travelers that belong to the same employee subgroup. Is that clear? Okay, so we have, as we said, we have different type of militaries. In the same group travel request, we can only include travelers that belong to the same group. Okay, so if we are traveling military experts, all the travelers should belong to the military experts employee subgroup. All travelers should have identical itinerary and should have the same baggage entitlements. Okay. And the estimated cost, okay, included in the group travel request should be the only expense included in the travel request, and should be the estimated cost to travel all the IUPs included in the travel request. So as we said, you remember that in the travel request we include the estimated cost for the airfare, right? In here we are traveling a group of travelers, and the estimated cost will be the one to travel. It will be the estimate to travel the entire group of IUPs. Okay. All right. Okay. So as we said, all the configuration, for example, the cost center or the travel processing office, will be based on the HR master of the travelers, right? So if we are traveling militaries, right, they will also have their own HR master record, and cost center and even the travel processing office will be based on the travelers that we will include in the travel request. Okay, Mike. So Mike, you were asking about which cost center will be included in the travel request, right? So there is a field as in any other travel request. There is a field to specify the cost assignment, right? It can be one cost center, or it can even be split into several cost centers. And the default one will be the cost center related to the section that the military is working for. Okay. Okay. All right. So the shipment will be also done on behalf after the travel request is approved, and it's also done individually for each traveler. All right. So the travel request is raised as a group, okay, and custom. So you're asking about the contingent members, and you're saying that some travel commercial as an advance. Okay, so contingent members will also use this deployment travel type in order to be deployed, okay, in a mission. So contingent members can also be included in a group travel to be deployed. All right, so they are considered militaries, and they will also use this group travel request to be deployed in a mission. Okay, and they will also need both an index number and an HR minimaster. All right, so then we said that the approval of the group travel, both as a certifying officer and as a TPO, will be done for the entire group, so no need to approve each individual traveler. Okay, and the same for TPO. So the TPO will also review and approve the group travel request. And what is important here is that once the TPO has approved the group travel request, the system will automatically split the group travel request into individual travel requests, okay? And there will be one trip number for each traveler. So up until the TPO approves the group travel request, there was only one travel request for the entire group, and after the TPO approves it, the system will automatically split and generate one travel request for each traveler. And this individual travel request will be the ones that will be used later on for the ticket billing process. And that's why we said that the travel vendor will have to send individual invoices, one for each individual travel request. Okay. All right. So ticket processors, again, so that the process to run the ticket billing steps are the same, so there are no changes. The only thing you have to consider is that there will be one invoice for each of the travelers, right? So the vendor will have to send the invoice for each of the travelers, and if in the group travel, the travel administrator specify the cost for the entire group, the system will split the cost and will include the average cost for each individual trips. Okay. All right. And then talking about the expense reports, everything is done individually for each traveler, and the travel administrator will submit an expense report for each individual IUPs. Okay, and they should be linked to the individual travel requests that were created by the system automatically after the TPO approved the group travel request. So Frank, you're asking about what to do if a contingent needs to travel urgently, right? So remember that in order to raise anything in Umoja, right, we need always the index number and the HR minimaster. So there's no way we can skip that in Umoja. If for urgency we need to travel somebody, right, and if it's urgent operationally, right, you can always do you can always travel, right, and then do the administrative process, right? But in Umoja, a requirement, you cannot raise a travel request without an index number and an HR minimaster. So the system is not able to process any travel request without it. So if for operational purposes there is an urgency, right, it can be managed as always, as you do with any other urgency you have, okay? But administratively and with Umoja, you cannot submitting a travel request without an index number and without an HR master record, right? So we understand that this urgency situation happened, okay, but I mean, we will need to manage these exceptional cases as we always do, but it's important that you know that administratively and with Umoja, in order to raise a travel request, we always require index number and the HMini master, okay? All right, so then last slide before we go on break. For the approval of the spend report, remember that the approval is only needed if there are changes in the cost to or in the expenses to be paid or recovered from the traveler. Okay, so the approval by the TSA and by the TPO will be done for each individual expense report. So the travel request is processed and approved as a group, but the expense report is submitted and approved individually, one for each traveler. Okay. All right. So that was what we wanted to say about the deployment and repatriation. We have questions about, is it possible to prepare a travel request after traveling? Yes, the system allows it, right? So you can submit travel requests for dates in the past, so retroactively. And remember that always when you raise a travel request with less than 21 days in advance, you will have to, or the traveler or the travel administrator will have to specify the reason for not being able to raise the travel request before. Okay. All right. So now that I have all the questions, so it's we can have 5 minutes break, and I will also take the opportunity to read all the questions and to reply to all your questions after the break. Right. So right now it's 11:15. So in 11:20 we restart the session. Okay. Thank you. So good morning. We are back. So we are gonna restart the session. Can you hear me? Anybody can hear me? Yes, no. Yes, Alpha. Okay. So maybe the rest are still on break. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. At least you can hear me. All right. So we are gonna continue. So I had time to go through some of the questions you wrote in the chat and in the Q&A. So remember, we have two different panels. Okay, so we have Q&A for questions and the chat for any other comment. Okay, because I think people are sometimes posting questions in the chat and posting comments in the Q&A. Okay, so please try to put questions in the Q&A and any other comment. For example, if you cannot hear the audio or anything else, you can use the chat for that purpose. Okay. So regarding the questions, we have questions about migration from FSS to Umoja. Okay, so this is part of the implementation project. All right, so there are deadlines for that. So basically, tonight, PT8 module is going to be decommissioned. So national staff members will no longer be allowed to submit travel requests. All right, but the F10 will still be enabled to complete all the expense reports related to travel requests that were initiated in FSS. Okay, but this is part of the implementation project, so you shouldn't be so much worried about that unless you are a national staff or you have something to do with that. Okay, but basically whatever was initiated in FSS will be finalized in FSS, and all travel requests as of tomorrow will have to be initiated in Umoja. Okay, and remember, PT8 is fully decommissioned with because of this project, because of the travel implementation, but F10 is not going to be fully decommissioned because it's used to claim non-travel related expenses. So we had another question raised by John, okay, regarding that. So that's why F10 it's still kept, right? It's still remaining in FSS to be able to claim non-travel related expenses. Okay. We had another question by Deborah about the standard accommodation and related to the military subsistence allowance. Okay, because as you know, MSA it's paid by HR through regular payroll, but we will see later on in the presentation that because of travel purposes, the militaries might be entitled for additional expenses. Okay, like for example for additional accommodation expenses or incidental. So the travel-related expenses for MSA will be claimed via the expense report, all right, or through the travel request and expense report, and then it's going to be the HR section that will have to review all the different travel request and expense reports for militaries, and will have to adjust the amount to be paid as a regular MSA, okay, for the through payroll. Okay, so HR will review all the amounts paid to military as additional MSA and will adjust the amount to be paid as MSA through payroll. Okay, so all travel-related MSA expenses will be claimed through the travel request and expense report, and then the monthly one that is paid via payroll will have to be adjusted by HR. Okay, so are we ready to continue? I can still see a lot of people that are not connected. All right. Okay, so let's continue. So we discussed the process to deploy, okay, a group of militaries, right, or to repatriate them, okay. And now we are gonna cover the part of how individual uniform personnel are gonna be using employee self-service to raise within mission travel request and non-commercial, okay. So we said within mission travel request and non-commercial, who's gonna be raising? Are IUPs gonna be able to raise their own travel request in ESS? Yes or no? So will IUPs have access to employee self-service? What do you think? Any answer? Okay. Okay, so Amali and Frank, remember you can use the yes and the no button. Okay, you have this green check mark and the red cross. Okay, then you can use to reply yes or no. Okay, I can see mostly yes. Okay, so IUPs will have access. IUPs will have access to employee self-service. And what about contingents? Will contingents have access to employee self-service? Yes or no? Okay, very good. All right. So contingents, even though they are militaries, they are not considered individual uniform personnel. Okay, they will not have access to Umoja. They will not have access to the employee self-service, right? And what about an IUP, let's say, police officer traveling outside mission area, okay, with a UN flight? Is he gonna be able to raise the travel request by themselves? So let's say a police officer that is an IUP have to travel outside mission area with a UN flight, let's say from Mogadishu to Entebbe, okay? So will they be able to raise their own travel request, IUP traveling outside mission area with a UN flight? Will the IUP be able to raise their own travel request or not? So here I can see mainly no's, but some yes. Okay, so here is the trick, right? So IUPs will only be allowed to raise within mission trips. Okay, so even if the mode of travel is non-commercial, let's say for example UN flight, they will not be able to do it by themselves. So it's gonna be the travel administrator because the trip is outside mission area. So IUPs can only do it for within mission area trips. So they always need index number and HMINI master, no changes on that. And in this case, the IUP will be able to raise the travel request. So we always here talk about individual travel request. So we forget about the group travel request concept that only applies to deployment and repatriation, right? So what about if we need to travel in a mission? If we need to travel a group of militaries within mission area, okay, for, let's say, for official purposes, will the group travel apply? Yes or no? What do you think? We need to travel a group of militaries within mission area. Okay, can we use the group travel functionality in Umoja? Yes or no? What do you think? Right, so we have here a draw, right? So, and even more people saying yes than no. So here we have to repeat that group travel functionality is only enabled for deployment and repatriation. So for official travel, there is no group travel functionality. So if we need to travel a group of militaries within mission area, there is no group travel functionality enabled in Umoja, and each traveler should have their own travel request. Okay? So the answer to the question was no, we cannot use the group travel functionality to travel a group of militaries within mission area. The group travel functionality is only enabled for deployment and repatriation. All right? And here we are talking about that. We are talking about within mission travel, right? And always that we have within mission travel non-commercial, the IUP, the individual uniform personnel, can create their own travel request that will later on be reviewed by the certifying officer, by the TSA, and later on by the TB20 TPO Lite, right? Will there be any case of a travel request raised by an IUP that will go to the regular TPO, to the commercial TPO? Yes or no? What do you think? So will there be any travel request raised by the IUP through employee self-service that will reach the, instead of the TB20 non-commercial TPO, that will go to the regular TPO, to the TB10? Okay, so we have here majority of people saying no. All right, so no is the answer. And the reason is that all travel requests raised by the IUP will be always non-commercial. So if the travel request is non-commercial, it will always go to the TPO non-commercial. So there's never gonna be a commercial ticket involved if the travel request was raised by the IUP. So it will always go to the TPO non-commercial, and this will also have an impact in the ticket billing process. So there will never be a ticket billing process involved if the travel request was raised directly by the IUP using the employee self-service, right? Because in all the cases, the travel requests are always non-commercial if the travel request was raised by the IUP. Okay. All right. And the spend report, if the travel request was raised by the IUP, the spend report is raised also by the IUP and will have to be reviewed and approved by the regular roles, by the TSA and by the travel claims processor. Okay. So yes, the IUP will raise their travel request using the employee self-service portal, and there are new and more simplified screens that have been developed for the IUPs to make it easy, right, to raise travel requests. And Deborah, yes, this paragraph relates to your question. So any other travel needs for an IUP, let's say for trips outside mission area or trips within mission area but requiring commercial ticket, will have to be raised by the travel administrator on behalf of the IUP. Right? So keep in mind that the travel requests that are not allowed for IUPs is going to be always the travel administrator, the one raising the TR on behalf. Okay. So that was the part of within mission area and non-commercial. For outside mission area, the process is very similar. So if the trip involves a travel request outside mission area, the process is very similar, but in this case, the one raising the travel request is going to be the travel administrator, okay? And the TSA will need to approve the TR, and then it can go to the TV10 or to the TV20, depending on the mode of travel. If it's commercial, to the TV10. If it's non-commercial, to the TV20. There might be ticket billing if there is commercial ticket involved, and the expense report will be raised again by the travel administrator and approved if needed by the TSA and by the travel claims processor. Okay. All right. So regarding the militaries, so you have at least an overview of what's coming for national staff and for militaries. Okay. But remember that we are not only deploying the solution for militaries and national staff, but also other non-staff like consultants and individual contractors are going to be using also Moja to travel. Okay, for all the other employee groups, right? For all the other non-staff like CICs, UMBs, or even meeting participants, they don't have access to Moja, and everything is done on behalf of the traveler by the travel administrators. Okay. So the process is the same, right? So we have the HR and the index number and the HR minimaster process is very similar. So we need the index number and the HR minimaster. Okay. We have the travel request done on behalf. There is a travel administrator. NS stands for non-staff. That is the one that takes care of raising travel requests for both consultants and individual contractors. This travel request is approved by the TSA and by the TPO, and the ticket billing process might also be needed. And the expense report is the same. It's always raised on behalf and approved by the TSA and by the travel claims processor. Okay. And so this was for CICs. For UMBs is very similar. Everything is the same, but the only difference is that the travel administrator role is a different one. So instead of the one dealing with non-staff, there is a specific travel administrator role that deals only with volunteers. The one that will raise the travel request, the role is different, right? So the process is the same, TSA and TPO, and the expense report process is the same, okay, for UMBs. All right. Something that is not mentioned here regarding UMBs is that they are also entitled to R&R, right? There is also rest and recuperation for UMBs, okay, and they are going to be able to raise their R&R travel requests in Umoja, and the process is going to be the same as for international staff. Okay, so they will be able to raise R&R entitlement travel that will have to be approved by the HR officer and then by the approver roles. Okay. All right. So this was the summary of the travel part. Okay, and I have together with me David, right, that wants to take advantage and to review the ticket billing process, right, David? But if you have any other question regarding the travel, I suppose there are a lot of questions, as in any other implementation. Remember that we are going live tomorrow, and we have travel LPs that have been trained in each mission that are fully aware of the changes, okay? And we will also have a ramp-up activities starting from from tomorrow. Okay, so there are going to be a group of people deployed in Entebbe to support this this deployment, myself included. So if you have questions or any other comment or doubts regarding how something is going to be done, all right, you are gonna, I'm gonna share also together with the presentation, I'm gonna share also my contact details, because I will be supporting missions with this deployment. So in case you have specific questions or comments that cannot be answered by your LPs in travel in your mission, you can always write me an email, and I'll be happy to support you. Okay. So I give the floor to David, okay, and he will continue from here.
Thank you so much, Leandro, and thank you everybody for attending this good session on travel overview. I know you were happy because I was not bothering you this morning during the session, but I'll take advantage of these last 10 minutes to share with you some information about the travel. Can you please click on the green check if you can hear me well? And Leandro, could you please change me as presenter? You are recording, right? It's still recording. All right. So yeah, I can see that most everybody. Maybe you can change me to host as well, so I can take control of the session. All right. So thank you so much. The idea now is just to go through 10 minutes or 15 minutes on the ticket billing process. And the good news here is that there are actually no news. So the idea will be just, I'm going to share a presentation and then do a quick refresh, and we'll see if it's fine. If you are already aware and you know very well the process of the ticket billing, that will be good for you to refresh it and to understand that nothing is changing. And if you don't know it, then it's also an opportunity for you. So let me please share my screen, if you don't mind. Let me see that from where I can do it here. Okay, 1 second. Share my desktop. Okay, can you see my screen? All right, I think so. So I'm going to put this slide in presentation mode. Okay. All right. So what about the ticket billing? I hope you can hear me well, because now I'm presenting from my laptop, but I think it's going to be fine. So first, I would like to give you an overview about the process. Maybe Leandro, okay, you can open the questions. All right. So first, I want to give you an overview on the end-to-end process on the ticket billing and how it starts. So basically, as Leandro was explaining, the most important or the first document that is created is the travel request, and this travel request requires approval. So when is the first FI posting happening, as Leandro was explaining, is after the travel request approval. Initially, when the travel request is created, there may be some impact in FM that may be statistical, but after the approval of the travel request, we have the first posting in FI, all right? And okay, so we have the first posting in FI after the travel request is approved, and the posting of this travel request is for the ticket side. So you will have a debit on expense account and a credit on the ticket clearing account. So this is the first impact in FI, and that's why we are considering this as part of the integration sessions. Then after the travel request is approved, then we have the pure ticket billing process that is falls under finance responsibilities. So how does the ticket billing process work in general? We have first an Excel upload, right? So the ticket billing, the list of invoices that we receive from the travel agency, we upload into the system typically as an Excel. But it can also be submitted through FT file. But I think in DFS and in peacekeeping, we are mainly using the Excel upload. So as part, so this is I mean, there are like 3 T codes that ticket billing processor are using, and I think they are even part in the presentation, but I want just to give you an idea of how the process works. So there is a load of this spreadsheet, and then there is another step in this process, which is matching invoices. Matching invoices means that from the spreadsheet that we get from the travel agency, we are comparing to the travel request. So we are cross-checking staff member index number or traveler index number. We are checking, I mean, the system is checking the amount that was committed, the estimated price of the ticket, the currency of the ticket, and the payment method, probably. I mean, the payment method is identified later, actually. So if the amount of the ticket is correct, the traveler is fine, and the travel request number is correct, we will have a matched invoice, and then the ticket billing processor removes the a payment block that appears in the invoice, and then add the payment data. So we'll basically select from the business partner the partner bank, the bank account that we have to transfer the money to. And then eventually, so to explain it better, once for the invoices that are matched, the system adds a payment block first. Okay, just to explain it properly. So out of the invoices that match, the system is adding a payment block. Okay, and it's posting some invoices, but they are not ready for payment because they are missing the payment data that was not entered by the TPO. So after selecting the proper payment data, ticket billing will unblock the invoice for payment and will clear it. If the invoices don't match, if there is something like the traveler index number don't match with the one that a business travel request, or the amount is too high, etc., then we have an unmatched invoice. And then we'll have to review the amounts, we have to review the trip and index number and repost, right? If you are performing ticket billing processor functions, you will know that a percentage of them go to the unmatched invoices. Yeah, I don't know exactly now, but maybe around 10% of the tickets they go to the unmatched invoices, and there is something to review. At least it was like that at the beginning. So coming again to the end-to-end process, let's say we started with the travel request, then we have travel app request that is approved, and we have the first FI posting, and then we have this ticket billing process that I just explained, where when you upload, or when the ticket billing processor is uploading the invoice in a spreadsheet, and then it's unblocking the payment and adding payment information. So what is the next FI posting? It's basically produced by the ticket billing process that will credit the vendor. So this vendor is actually the travel agency, and will debit the travel clearing account. So we have the travel clearing account being clear, right? So we have a clearing of the account. Basically, we'll have a clearing of the account because it's, the credit will balance the debits. And then we have now the credit on the vendor account. So how would the process continue? It's just a normal accounts payable process. So we'll go for vendor payment. So this will go directly to cashiers, and then cashier will be debiting the vendor account and crediting the bank account. Okay. And then eventually, only if it's needed, if the amount didn't match, we'll have ticket liquidation. Now, do you have any question about this slide? All right. Let me just display the questions, and then could you please click on the green check if this process is fine, is it clear, is understood, or you want me to cover it again? We have travel request approved, then we have the recognition of the expense of the ticket. It happens immediately after travel request is approved because we have the agreement with the travel agency. It's based on the service delivered. and then service delivery principle. Then we have ticket billing process, that is basically accounts payable process where we are crediting the vendor account and debiting the travel clearing account. And then we have regular vendor payment. And now I'll explain a bit of the liquidation process. Are you please following me? I see not much, I see 92 people connected and only few of you are clicking on the yes. All right. Now I see the counter is increasing. So I think that part is clear. Let me check if you have any question. I guess this part. Okay. Yeah, if there are some comments about maybe previous questions that were not replied. We'll check, and if there is anything that needs to be answered, we will maybe reply by email or in the. Okay. So thank you so much for replying. So if this process is clear, what happens when let's say the invoice amount is lower than what was estimated? So let's imagine that we have a ticket estimate of $100. Sorry that today I'm not using the mouse, so I'm trying to write something and it's pretty ugly. And then what happens if eventually the ticket amount is $90? So if after processing the invoice it's 90, so what happens is that we need to liquidate, because we had an amount that was committed initially in the travel request, and we are going to pay 90, so we have to return the difference to the corresponding fund center. So if there is any difference, we will go through the process of ticket liquidation, which is basically liquidating the commitment, and then this will create the expense account to return the budget, and creating the expense account to reduce the expense that was initially posted for the ticket, and then we'll create the travel clearing as well, because the estimation was higher. I think this part is much better understood if we draw some teeth. Okay, so I'm going to have 2 more slides to review 2 posting exercises. So please pay attention to the teeth, because you are a financial piece, and I think this is the part that is more interesting. So I want to see, some of you are still connected, but you are not even watching your screen because I have an indicator that is telling me. So please join me again and pay attention to what I'm saying. Otherwise, I will start naming the people that is not paying attention. You don't want to be in that situation. All right, so ticket billing process. Let's follow this example with me. So a staff member created a travel request, right? And then the ticket amount was $2,400. And the ticket invoice has been received for the same amount. So this is an easier scenario where let's say that the amount, where the amount of the invoice is matching the amount of the ticket. So first thing will be posting of the posting run that happens after the travel request. After the travel request is approved by the TI. So what would be the accounting entries? Can you please write it on the chat? So the travel request is for the ticket price in the travel request is $2,400. So what would be the the first posting that is created by the TI? All right, very good. Yes, we will debit expense account and we will credit the travel clearing account. Very good, for the amount of the ticket. That's correct, that's fine. So what would be the second step? The second step is the ticket billing process. So we are receiving the invoice from the travel agency. Very good, very good. You put it everybody replied correctly. So the ticket billing process generates another document. So it's important that you also understand, or you also get an idea of the document types, because if you have an integration problem, you can check and you understand if it's a TI document will mean something. If it's a TG document, you will identify also the transaction that created this problem. So in the case of ticket billing, you have the TG document. In the case of travel request, you have the TI document. This is document type. So what is the accounting, the posting of the ticket billing process? So what is the posting of this TJ? Very good. We are crediting the vendor and we are debiting what? All right. Can you please reply to me in the chat? Okay. We are very good. Exactly. We are creating the vendor and debiting the clearing account. So we have a debit of 2400 and we are creating the vendor. And then after that, we will have to unblock the payment document, the payable, and we have to add payment options. So eventually cashiers can do the normal payment with KZ, and that is nothing new. So we will be debiting the vendor account and crediting the bank. We are still, also we have the vendor that is clear. We are not touching the traveler account here because we are only talking about the ticket billing. But if we would like to add also the let's say the advance or the DSA, we will be touching the traveler. But for this scenario, it's fine. Now, as a last step of the ticket billing process, there is a matching process that is actually clearing the open items. Clearing the items in the travel clearing. So, okay, right. So eventually, this matching process will debit and credit travel clearing to clear the entries. Okay. So the ticket billing process itself does not clear the account. It will add the debit, but then you have another step. There is another step that is called the matching process. And we will manually, not manually, it's a particular T code, but you will have to select the open item, so the system will create an SG document that will clear the account. Okay, is this clear? Can you please click on the green check if this is clear? If you agree with the T's and the different posting. All right. Okay, now I see most of you that are replying. Thank you very much. If you have a question, just write it on the chat. Okay, so I can see it. Oh, sorry, on the chat, on the Q&A. Okay. Okay. 1 second, I have to read the. Can you do matching as soon as you upload invoice? Yeah. Once you upload invoice, not after. So there is a question if it's possible to do the matching as soon as you upload invoice. When you upload invoice, you need to unblock the invoice and add payment, let's say payment information, and then the matching can be done immediately. Actually, that's the process. The matching, so the matching and the later clearing can be done immediately after uploading the invoice. Yes. So there is a question, what is the SG document? The SG document is a document that is crediting and debiting the account just to clear them, because when you are posting this ticket billing process, this transaction is not clearing the account. So it's actually adding the debit. So you will see the credit and the debit that will match and will balance, but there is no automatic clearing immediately. So you can go there and you select the 2 entries. So the system, in order to clear the items, will create debit and a credit and will clear all of them. It's just the way that SAP is clearing this account. Also, there is a comment from Juliana. Thank you for pointing this out. Yeah, I'm telling about unblocking and adding payment information. But yeah, the right order is you first add payment information, and then after that you unblock. All right. Okay. So if this part is clear, I'm going to move to the last slide of the training, which is the following one. It's another example. So please, please pay attention to this one, because it's the last one, right? And you don't want to miss it. Another example is a staff created a travel request. The ticket amount was for $2,400, so $2,400, and the ticket invoice has been received for the amount of $2,000. So you see now the invoice is less than the estimated price. So let's go together through the posting, please. Okay. So posting run after travel request is approved by the TPO. What is the TI document? Can you please tell me what is the TI document? In this case, it will not change, right? Because it's as before, still the ticket price was 2,400, so we are debiting expense account and crediting travel clearing. What happens when we do the ticket billing process? And the invoice that we receive is for 2,000. Can you please tell me the accounting entries? I know this is very basic, but just to make sure that we are all, you are following me. What is the accounting entries for the ticket billing process in this scenario? The ticket invoice has been received for 2,000. Yeah, very good. So we are creating the vendor for 2,000 and we are debiting the travel clearing account. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let me read something that. Okay. Thank you so much. Some of the colleagues are leaving. You're telling me thank you so much because I know it's already 12. Just bear with me. The rest of you 5 more minutes. Thank you. So the process is the ticket billing is creating the vendor and debiting the travel clearing account. So what else? Now we will have the ticket. We will have to add payment options and then unblock the payable, unblock the document. All right. And we have the ticket payment. Ticket payment will be what? How much are we paying for it? So we are actually debiting vendor account and crediting the bank for 2,000. So we will have the items are clear in the vendor account. Okay, now this is the last question. So please, now as you can see, we have open items in the travel clearing accounts. Can you please tell me what will be the posting of the ticket liquidation process? Can you please reply to me? All right. Roberto, you are correct. Amalia, you are correct. Leslie, you are correct as well. So, exactly, right. So everybody is replying correctly. So we will be crediting expense account for 400 and we will be debiting travel clearing 400. If we don't do the ticket liquidation, there is no way we can clear the travel ticket account. Okay, so we have to do ticket liquidation. And now that we have all these entries in the travel clearing account, we can go with the matching process, and matching process will clear again the entries regarding to this trip. So what would be the posting of the SG document? Will be again 2,400 as a debit, 2,400 as a credit, and this will clear all the entries. All right. So that was the only information I wanted to add, and the good news is that there are no news in the ticket billing process, right, Leandro? So I think, give me just 1 second because I want to say goodbye to you. It was a pleasure to share this with you, and I'm going to share now, by first time in the workshop, the camera so you can say goodbye to us. And as you can see, I'm sitting here with Leandro. It has been a pleasure. I'm very happy to be part still of this kind of trainings for finance. Thank you so much, Leandro, for joining in and sharing the last news on travel implementation module. And it has been, you know, we are always available. Sometimes we are busy. We cannot reply as fast as possible as we would like. So thank you so much. Have a good day, an excellent weekend.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah, congratulations to those that are doing Ramadan and you are already there. So we are finishing already. So have a nice weekend. Enjoy with your family, and yes, please reach out whenever you need. Okay. Okay. See you. Thank you so much.